Loud. How are you guys doing? Can I get a round of applause for Celine? I can't say her last name, so let's just say Celine.
I haven't even said anything yet. You might want to take that back by the end of this.
Super excited to have you here. For the people that don't already know you, would love if you told us a little bit about Loyal and what you're building.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Celine Halioua. I am the founder and CEO of Loyal. We're developing drugs to extend dog lifespan. The goal of the company is to get the first drug FDA approved for lifespan extension in dogs, and then hopefully, in the next year or so, you'll be able to go to the vet and get prescribed a drug to just keep your best friend healthier longer. I think, especially relevant to this group, I'm a first-time founder. Loyal is basically my first job. I was 24 when I started the company, solo founder, female, obviously. And we've raised about 125 million, I think more now, 135 million.
It's a lot of money if you can't keep track.
I know, I used to literally track every decimal, and now I'm like, whatever. We've raised a lot of money for a company that has, unlike the guy before me, only burned lots of money. We have literally not made any revenue in the 5 years of the company.
So what I love about this business, and actually we were talking to someone upstairs who said his girlfriend, every time they have a clinical approval or something, sends him the link, says, when this is out, it doesn't matter how much this thing costs, I will buy this because that's how important it is. It's a very different type of startup in that there's not market risk, but there's sort of product risk. What got you down this path of even believing this is possible?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting, different way to build a company. So I'm imagining what a lot of y'all are working on is it's physically possible, right? It is physically possible to build B2B SaaS or this software, or this AI thing or whatever. Maybe it's technically difficult, but it's possible. But the question is, what do you build, right? Is it gonna have product market fit? Are people gonna want it? Is the margins gonna be good? What's the CAC? What's the churn? Da 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 da. That is totally different in the world of deep tech. It's basically upside down. So it's for dog drugs, but also things like manufacturing, so space startups, all of kind of the Gundo Bros kind of startups, they all kind of fall under the same category. You're pretty sure that what you're building is objectively valuable, right? It is pretty consensus that Loyal, if and when we get a drug approved for lifespan extension in dogs, will be a billion to multi-billion-dollar company. The question isn't that. The question is, can we get there? Can we raise the money? Can we build the team? Can we find a drug that works, that's safe? Can we get through the FDA? Can we deal with all the regulatory chaos of the last year? Do I suck, right? It's funny, but it's also actually true in a lot of these cases with these deeply technical companies that this is something that investors think about. So every single round has really been, how do I tell a story that shows that we have de-risked our path to this, multi-billion-dollar company with a drug on market for lifespan extension in dogs, and how do I tell a story and kind of get across to someone that, the probability of success is materially higher, and therefore you should put your money in, because from a risk-reward ratio, if you're willing to underwrite that we will get there, it actually makes a lot of sense financially. It's a totally different way of fundraising. It's a totally different way of building a company. It's harder in some ways, it's easier in others. But it's certainly a very valid path and something that I really think people should look more into when they're deciding to dedicate their lives to something.
What was the first insight you had that made you even think, hey, there may be something here? Yeah,
so the quick background on me, I did an undergrad in neuroscience. Well, I actually got into art school, and then I dropped out of art school and I went to do neuroscience. Good story for a beer or sometime. Always had been a big animal person, but never planned on dedicating my life to pets. And I got really interested in the biology of aging. Basically this idea that, we think about diseases as independent today, right? Oh, you get diagnosed with Parkinson's, you get diagnosed with cancer, you get diagnosed with osteoarthritis or dementia. And they are in some ways different diseases, but they also actually share a lot more characteristics than you might think off of first blush, right? The biology of how we break down and how we age over time, it might look like osteoarthritis if it happens in your knee and dementia if it happens in your brain, but it actually is the same biological mechanisms that's occurring. And so there's actually a foundation of science that's older than me, significantly older than me actually, even now, that basically show that if you target the pathways and the mechanisms by which we break down over time, you can actually extend healthy lifespan. And I was just like, holy shit, like this is so cool. Like, why aren't we doing this, right? Like, obviously we're always gonna need, acute therapies for somebody who's acutely diagnosed with cancer or Parkinson's, but it's so difficult to treat someone once the disease has a multi-decade head start, right? So why can't we work on preventative medicine for these kind of pathologies of aging? So long story short, I started working for a woman named Laura Deming, who started a venture fund that was investing in this space. I basically stalked her until she gave me a job as her associate chief of staff assistant, and basically followed her around for way too little money. But it was super worth it because I learned all about this world in Silicon Valley. And I got the idea for Loyal because, if you're a big dog person, you probably know that big dogs live pretty short lives. I have a Rottweiler now. I've always had Labradors and big dogs. The bigger a dog is, actually the shorter their lifespan is. So if you look at a Great Dane, a Great Dane will live to 7 or 8, while a Chihuahua, the same species of dog, will live to 17 or 18 years. And as somebody who both loves big dogs and is very perplexed by small dogs, and also is very interested in the biology of aging, where, I'm pretty short, I'm not gonna live double the lifespan of somebody who's 6'5" in the audience or whatever, it didn't make sense. We consider it as normal, inherent, and natural. Long story short, the biology of when we selectively bred dogs for size, it looks like we accidentally gave them an accelerated aging disease. So dogs are this really interesting model of, they're an accelerated version of what's happening in all of us. And so if you can treat the big dog and help them live a longer life, you're both helping dogs, you're building a really big market, and you're learning about aging as it's relevant for all of us. So that was kind of the original idea. I thought it was really funny, actually. I didn't really think it was a company. And then, again, another story for a beer, but I was at a camping trip when I first moved to Silicon Valley. I didn't know anybody, so I got drunk, and I started talking about extending the guy's dog's lifespan, and some VC heard what I was working on, and then through the grapevine ran into somebody at YC Demo Day. Not that I ever got into YC, but that YC still plays a role in our story, I guess. And they tracked me down and are like, Celine, you idiot. This isn't just cool science. This is actually an amazing consumer marketing opportunity too, right? And a consumer product. And they gave, after a lot of talking and blah, 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 they gave me a term sheet and I started the company and that was the whole thing.
So alcohol accelerated your career.
It really did. It accelerates your aging and accelerates your career. Unfortunately, Loyal has definitely increased my rate of aging and I cannot drink anymore. Bad things happen.
All right, let's go back in time. So you were 24 at the time.
Yeah.
Starting a company that was going to be very capital intensive, were you at any point concerned about how much capital this business would take, or was it just, let's take it one step at a time, one round at a time, and establish milestones?
I had no idea how hard this was going to be. I'm going to be totally honest. If I knew everything I knew today, I don't think I would have started Loyal.
Have you all seen this big poster a lot of startups have? We don't do this because it's easy, but because we thought it would be easy. Was it a case of that?
100%. I mean, I pissed off one of our investors so bad, a name you guys would all know, because I thought we were going to get to market in 2 years. And we are 5 years in and we are still not on market, right? It is way harder than I ever thought it would be. But in a way, that naive optimism, I think, is a total superpower. And a lot of good companies and good ideas come out of just being, hard-headed and running through walls. And yeah, I was wrong about a lot of stuff, but I was right about what mattered. And it's created a lot of value.
Quick little pivot, because I'm curious. Do you think you could have built this company and raised money for this company in any other place than sort of the environment of Silicon Valley?
No. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anyone in New York. Maybe you could do it here. But I was actually doing my PhD in England, and I'm German, and we were talking about this earlier, how much we like Europe. You certainly could not have started that company there. Even in Silicon Valley, I remember for the first couple of years, people would literally laugh in my face when I said I was working on dog longevity. They thought I was now it's hot. People email me and they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about working on a dog longevity startup. And I'm like, shut up. What do you mean? It's really cool, actually. I appreciate it, even if it is competition. But no, I think Silicon Valley is the only place in the world that I have found where they'll look at a 24-year-old who knows literally nothing, I was kind of an idiot. You could say I still am. And be like, you want to work on this crazy idea and get the first ever lifespan extension drug through the FDA? Here's $5 million, go figure it out. It's insane.
I've always maintained one of the cool things about Silicon Valley specifically, America more generally, is it's one of the few places that takes young people seriously,
Yeah.
right? That's really cool. Let's imagine there's people here that may want to start a deep tech company. So let's kind of take us step by step. You raised money. How do you sort of break that down into the milestones required for each of the next rounds?
Yeah, so I'd say my biggest advice is, okay, so you have an idea and then you have an end state, and the end state is hopefully objectively valuable. Then there's going to be, how do you de-risk on the path to doing that is objectively to an investor, so not just to you, but objectively to an investor, reduces your risk and increases your probability of hitting that end stage, right? And so for us, it's like the milestones are like semi-obvious, right? There's like certain FDA approvals you get along the way. But I remember it was a really big cognitive dissonance for me. Again, we were also talking about this, where, we first, I think, we met through angel investing. Before that, we met in New York, and I was like in this like horrible like fundraising slog right after ZERP ended. And I was super frustrated because I was like, we have this data showing the drug's efficacious, but nobody wants to invest in the company. This was after we would raise our Series B, our Series A. And then we got basically a piece of paper from the FDA that said, yep, we think your drug is efficacious. And I literally raised a 47 million Series B overnight. Like literally the first day I got a term sheet. It takes longer to close, but it's not as good of a story if I talk about all the timelines of the closing docs and whatnot. And the only difference was that the science, which I thought was de-risking, wasn't actually de-risking. It was the piece of paper from the FDA that objectively validated our science and meant that the investor didn't have to do diligence in something that they realistically didn't understand. And that was such an aha moment for me. And I think it's the same for whatever you want to build in deep tech, right? Like, what is the thing? Like, be empathetic to your investor. How many bets does your investor have to underwrite to believe that your company is going to be $1 billion company, right? How many things do they have to understand to be able to assess whether your probability of success on those bets are high or low? And just spoon feed it and design your fundraising around this. Another person who's actually so good at this is Blake from Boom Supersonic. So he's on our board. I'm sure you saw that recently they flew their kind of prototype jet, Supersonic, for the first time. They built that for like very legitimate reasons, the baby boom, but they also built it because it was a proof point. They can build a plane, their designs can work, they can go supersonic, and as they disclosed, later on, that they could do a boomless supersonic, right? Nobody would have believed them if they didn't have it like done the first time. And so it's figuring out what that is for your business and designing your fundraising strategy and your capital use cases around that.
Do you think if you want to start a deep tech company, you have to have the depth of knowledge yourself as an individual?
No. I mean, again, Blake's a great example of this. Maybe you guys should have just invited Blake. He is a software engineer. I think he went viral. His LinkedIn went viral because he was like a product manager or something. Yeah, at like LinkedIn? I should know this. He's on my board. Anyhow, he's not an aerospace engineer is my point. I'm like scientifically trained. I consider it insulting to my scientists to call myself a scientist. You do need to know enough to be dangerous, and you have to have the frameworks to ask technical people really good questions, but that is much more first principles thinking than it is having a classical PhD, and it is what you're doing. In fact, I would say a PhD in some aspects can be anti-selective because it tends to create a dogmatism and like a very like linear point of view about whatever you're doing versus a more first principles based assessment of your field.
Let's try this. I'm only 50% sure it'll work for the rest of us, but can you in a very simplified way explain roughly how the drug you have in the market works?
So not in market yet,
Yeah.
hopefully in the next year. I think the easier one to I'll start with the big dog short lifespan and then like kind of proxy that into the other drug. So basically, when a puppy is born, all puppies are actually born approximately the same size. The difference between your Chihuahua puppy and your Great Dane puppy is that they just grow at a much, much faster rate. Like if you've ever seen, a Labrador puppy, it'll have these huge paws, and like every week it looks like a totally different dog. It's because this dog is just literally like dividing and multiplying much faster. And there's a lot of mechanisms that drive this, but at a high level, there's these little proteins that circulate in your blood called growth factors. If you're really into bodybuilding, which this is a tech conference, so nobody is, but theoretically, you've probably heard of growth factors, right? They're these little proteins that bind to your cells and say, grow, divide, grow, divide. It is supernatural that when you are in puberty, or when the dog's in puberty, that they have very high levels of these growth factors so that a dog can grow into the large, Labrador or Great Dane or whatever. The issue that was caused by historical inbreeding, because of course breeds are artificial, we created them, like we didn't domesticate the wolf and have a poodle pop out, right? Like they're fake, is that these levels of growth hormones do not go down significantly once the dog is fully grown. So what happens when these growth factors are super high concentration in the blood in an adult dog, it's still driving the dog to turn over faster, but it's turning over faster in an aging rate, right? And so a Great Dane will have something like 800 nanograms of growth hormone per milliliter of blood, while a Chihuahua has something like 10. Right? So, an 80 time higher amount of levels. Long story short, this is very well established in everything from mice to humans, that super high levels of growth hormone in adulthood will cause bigger body size, but also rapid aging and increased incidence of disease. So simply what the drug does is once a dog is fully grown, it takes down the levels of these growth hormones from being 800 or whatever to 300, 200, right? It's still higher, but it's from a concentration perspective, it's a level that's seen naturally in dogs, but it's a level that's seen naturally in smaller dogs. And the idea is that this then slows that rate of aging, takes the dog from a 2x faster rate to a 1.4x faster rate. Again, we haven't clinically shown that yet. In case somebody from the FDA is here, we have not clinically shown that yet. I have to say that. But that's the hypothesis of the drug, to slow the rate of aging, to extend their lifespan. There's a lot more to talk about on that, but that's the high level.
I actually only just learned that dog breeds were made up. Maybe I'm just ignorant. I didn't know that until this moment.
Well, so actually really cool. The domesticated wolves are huge. Huge, huge, huge. Domesticated wolves, aka wolves that are not, getting infections and dying, will live 17 or 18 years. They're larger than almost any dog breed. So it's not inherent or normal or natural that a big dog should live such a shorter life. It's us. We messed it up.
So how many different approaches did you actually have to end up trying before finding the thing that kind of works? Was it hey, we know this has a good shot of working and we have to prove it, or let's try 17 different things and find one that works?
Yeah, so this was actually one of the big debates we had early in starting the company. Actually, it was the board. So I started the company around this big dog short lifespan thesis. It was kind of like my pet thesis, no pun intended. But the way by which we were targeting it was very different. I came from a gene therapy lab. I was like, oh, we're going to do gene therapy. Wrong approach, did not make sense. Not safe, blah, 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 high COGS, pivoted to a different approach, which became our first drug. And that became after actually I hired scientists and hired, one of my first hires was a VP of aging biology from a big pharma company called Regeneron. And he was like, Celine, I like the idea, the approach is wrong, let's do this instead, right? And that's one thing you have to learn as a deep tech founder, is how and when to listen. I'm a big fan of founder mode, but you have to be really careful when you're a deep tech company because you aren't the expert. You are by definition not the expert. You are the facilitator and sticky glue in between the experts, right? So that's one aspect. Sorry. The second was that was I think pretty different from classical software-based startups. Is we've had multiple products basically since day one. So we have 4 products in the pipeline right now. We had 2 in year 1. We've been growing that pipeline. Literally yesterday I was at a conference working on exactly that. It's high risk, high reward. For us, it makes sense because we know the thesis is correct. We know a dog's lifespan can be extended with a drug. We're pretty damn sure people are going to want it. We feel confident we can get the FDA approval. So then there's all this extrinsic risk that's uncontrollable. It's things like, is a drug safe? Is that specific drug going to work? And I didn't want Loyal to fail if we, were sorry, right about everything else, but wrong about the specific drug we chose. So we had multiple, so we'd have multiple shots on goal.
So from the outside, again, I've observed your journey, and startups, I know on the inside things are more chaotic than it seems. From the outside, people look at it and they're like, wow, up and to the right, flawless execution. Looking back now, what are some of the things that if you had a chance to do over, you would make a completely different decision and approach it entirely differently than what you did?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know what I would do completely differently. I think there was a lot of things I got really wrong. One like very industry specific one is that I would have started the commercial manufacturing process like the day I picked the drug, right? Like, I don't know if that's like relevant to anyone else. I think executive hiring was super, super hard. And figuring that out was super difficult. Because you have to hire for people who have like really deep context and who are culture fit and who can survive in a startup and like work in a startup environment. I've hired or built a really, really good team, but I've also misfired at a pretty high rate along the way. I don't know if I could.
What
done anything
percentage of
different.
executives would you say have worked? Because we were talking about that earlier as well.
I would say a fail rate of 30 to 50% on executives.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
No, it's not. It's a bit of a drama sometimes, but you can always get better at hiring. But honestly, I found that you get really good at fixing the previous thing that you got wrong. But then there's a whole new like Cambrian explosion of like all the other things that you didn't realize were like variables you need to like now. For example, we have a lot of people who want to join the company because they think it's a rocket ship. And so, how do you get the mercenaries who are pretending to be missionaries, and how do you like detangle that? Wasn't a problem 2 years ago.
Makes sense. So again, you've raised over $100 million. As a female founder, do you ever feel, I don't know, an additional sense of pressure or stigma or?
Yeah, I really, really do. There was like some news this week about Elizabeth Holmes's husband starting a blood diagnostics company. Sorry, hold on. I need to drink some water.
Yeah, take your time.
You should not start a company because your immune system will get totally wrecked, and then you'll be on stage and you'll be losing your voice. It's very inconvenient. I don't recommend it. Okay. Yeah, I definitely feel a lot of pressure. So like the Elizabeth Holmes thing is something that I have like consciously and subconsciously had to deal with a lot when fundraising, because everyone looks at this company and they're like, this can't be real. Like young female founder, like cute for San Francisco, not for New York, I understand. But for San Francisco, like, you know, pretty good. They're like, she must not be legit, right? And it's not like they say this to my face, but I can hear it in the questions they ask, right? And it's really frustrating, honestly. Like I remember in the early days, I would get so mad. Like I remember one time I did a partnership pitch, and the like GP was just like mansplaining shit to me, and afterwards I called my partner and I was like, this dude is full of crap, like what the hell, like doesn't he know that like I know this shit way better than he, and why is he explaining to me my strategy, blah 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 blah. And the thing I learned from that experience and many others is like you have to pick your battles. And like the learning I've had is the number one thing I can do for parody and for people not making Elizabeth Holmes jokes all the time and blah 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 is being successful, right? If I make Loyal into a multi-billion-dollar company, if I bring this product to market, then there's a pattern match that's positive. And then if somebody makes a reference, they're going to be looking at like, oh, what is the pattern match? Oh, like Celine's a pattern match, right? And so I feel a lot of pressure about that because I'm very cognizant of the fact if we fail, which many biotech companies fail, even if they're very legitimate, working in good science, just because of luck or whatever, that it might be considered a bad pattern match. But I am like really excited about hopefully creating a positive pattern match. And yeah, managing that psychology is really, really tough. And you just have to figure that out. And people gave me this advice early on and I didn't listen. And you kind of just have to figure out what your path on dealing with this is.
I bet the opposite is also true, where I wouldn't be surprised, or actually I guarantee you there's people that already look up to you, right? Like it's already people who, you know, you're a role model already. They look up at what you've done. And yes, I mean, a lot still has to go. You're not at the the finish point, but there's also probably the other side of it where people want to be you.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if they want to be me after they see me like sniffling and coughing on stage. They're like, oh, I want to keep a long diameter from her. But no, I mean, I think when you're like of an unrepresented or lower represented group, whatever that is, like often having one person in this ahead of you who you can learn from or look from or be inspired from, it's really powerful. Like for me, that was Laura Deming, who I worked with at Longevity Fund, right? She was one of the first women to build a venture fund as a solo GP at 18 in this space. And without her, I wouldn't have started Loyal.
Cool. So for every, I don't know, future deep tech founder in the audience here, maybe they're in their 20s, maybe they're in their 30s, whatever it is, what words of advice would you have?
My advice would be go really, really deep. Really understand what you want to build, really understand the space, understand the science. You don't have to be a scientist to understand the science. You don't have to be an aerospace engineer to understand aerospace engineering. Learn how to ask really, really good first principles questions. And like one of the best ways to learn how to do that is to get depth of context or something. Because once you like understand what competency and comprehension looks like, you can very quickly figure out how to get to some degree of that in a field that's completely de novo, right? Like I'm obviously smart, but I don't think you actually have to be like that smart to figure that out. It's a framework. It's a mentality shift that's very, very different. So that would be my first advice. And my second advice was, if you build something, like really look for founder market fit. I think one of the reasons why Loyal has been successful to date is that I genuinely love dogs. Like I like dogs more than I like most people, right? I've been vegetarian my entire life. Like this is very, very personally important to me. The biological aspect was obviously my scientific training, and I was really excited about the consumer side of what we're building because of my artistic background. I don't think if I didn't have that, it seems like super glamorous and sexy when somebody's sitting on a stage to be a founder, but the reality is being sick all week and having to travel and like being on calls back to back and somebody's pissed and wants to quit and you have to go deal with it and your board's like, oh my God, and there's an FDA inspection, like all this stuff. The only way you get through it and the only way you grow at the rate that you need to be is if you're just so unbelievably obsessed with the problem that you're just willing to dedicate your life to turning it into a reality. That's how I feel about Loyal, and I truly believe that if you want to build a company and something as difficult as an Adams business, you need to feel that about whatever you're working on, and if you don't, that's okay, but like, it's going to be real hard to go down this path if you don't have that degree of conviction.
Cool. We're almost at time, so final question, what's next for Loyal? I mean, what would you love to see happen in the next 2-3 years?
I think the thing I'm really excited about, besides all the obvious things of bringing this drug to market, blah, 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 no biggie, right, is I'm really excited about the translational side of what we're doing, right? So the kind of OG thesis, the OG motto of Loyal, which the branding team does not love, but I as CEO get to say we're keeping it, is save the dog, save the world, right? This idea of taking what we learn in dogs and translating into human aging. We're starting to finally get to work on that, and it's really, really exciting.
Cool. Awesome. Big round of applause for Celine. Where can people learn more and stay in touch as you recover?
So I have a not very well updated personal website, CelineAJH.com. I'm on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. Sorry, I think X is a terrible name. So you can find me on Twitter, Celine Halioua, and you can find me in San Francisco walking my dog.
Thank you.